June 20th meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission. Before we get started, please make sure your cell phones are turned off out of courtesy to everyone in the attendance. Please stand. We'll have Commissioner Squires lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America, Republic, nation, visible, liberty.
Thank you very much. All right, let's start with the General Administration Function Part 1. Are there any presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda? Okay. Any correspondence and staff communication from the Planning Commission Secretary?
Yeah, just have a couple of quick notes for the commission, mostly on logistics. After tonight, our next regularly scheduled meeting would be on July 4th. We will obviously cancel that one. However, I do anticipate a much more involved meeting on the 18th of July. So if any commissioners already know that you may be on vacation or otherwise, not available, please let us know so that we can start getting our alternate up to speed. Otherwise, we will not meet on the 4th, of course, for obvious reasons. That concludes staff's communications at this time.
Thank you. And a disclosure of ex parte communication from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none. Then let's move on to public hearings. Item number 4 regarding 2455 Jefferson Boulevard wireless facility.
Good evening, Commissioners. Elijah Ortega, Assistant Planner. So the item for your consideration tonight is a public hearing for a new AT&T cell tower at 2455 Jefferson Boulevard. I do have a short presentation prepared, at the conclusion of which myself, along with AT&T's representative, are available to answer any questions. So AT&T is proposing a new cell tower to be constructed in the rear of the property. If you take a look at the projected slide here, I went ahead and highlighted a square box area of where the project is being proposed. The proposed tower is to be located behind the existing commercial building between Fire Station 45 to the east and the new Connect Apartments to the north. And as you can see, the site location is just south of the drainage canal. The tower would have both AT&T and T-Mobile antennas. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take a moment to explain what you're seeing here on the PowerPoint. So these are coverage maps provided by AT&T. You'll see the areas in green are designated as areas that are having the most reliable cell coverage, yellow being somewhat reliable, and blue being least reliable. And so the image on the left is actually the existing condition as it stands today. And the image on the right would be the improved condition. And as you can see, much of the yellow and blue areas under the improved condition would be designated as much more reliable after construction of the cell tower. So again, the tower is being proposed due to a lack of reliable cell coverage in this area of the city. And AT&T has provided the aforementioned coverage analysis showing that a new cell tower at this specific location would improve wireless connectivity for the Southport Town Center, Westbridge Plaza, River City High School, and the neighborhoods east and west of Jefferson Boulevard. So as you're aware, cellular coverage is considered a piece of critical infrastructure as it ensures connectivity for residents and emergency services. So reliable cell coverage is very important in this area of the city, of course, as it contains one of the city's most heavily trafficked retail areas. Next slide, please. So to provide some more background on the project, the commercial building at this location actually already contains wireless antennas within the existing grain silo feature at the building corner. Initially, AT&T was looking at constructing another similar stealth facility on top of the existing building, but a structural engineering analysis found this to be infeasible. As a result, AT&T is now proposing a stealth tower as demonstrated in this photo simulation, that will stand 70 feet tall and will match the architectural features, materials, and color of the existing commercial building. Next slide, please. So the city has a wireless telecommunications facilities policy that governs the land use and design for new cellular infrastructure. The policy dictates that the Planning Commission shall review new permits for cellular towers for compliance with these stated design guidelines. So just to be clear, the item before you tonight is principally regarding the proposed design of the tower. And as you can see on the slide, the policy requires that new wireless facilities be designed in a way that is compatible with the surrounding community and utilizes a stealth design. The intent of the wireless policy is to avoid exposed freestanding wireless antennas that stand out or intrude visually on the surrounding community. Regarding the shot clock, the Federal Communications Commission requires that cities consider new cellular projects within 150 days of submittal, and the shot clock for this project will term in August. Should the Planning Commission not take an action on this project before the shot clock expires, the project will be allowed to move forward under FCC authority without any city input on the design. Next slide, please. So in keeping with the intent of the policy's design requirements, staff is recommending that the applicant provide a mural similar to the existing Southport Fruit Company mural at the corner of the existing commercial building on the facade of the proposed new cell tower. And the primary purpose of this mural will be to soften the visual impact of an otherwise blank facade of the cell tower. So if approved, AT&T will be permitted to construct the cell tower as currently designed and as you're currently seeing in these photo simulations, but with a mural element on the facades facing Jefferson Boulevard and Lake Washington Boulevard. It wouldn't be the exact same mural, but it would be in keeping with the same theme and general artistic theme of what you're seeing on the right there. So with that, staff's recommendation is for the commission to conduct the public hearing and approve the wireless telecommunications facilities permit. This concludes my presentation, and again, I'm available for any questions along with AT&T's representative as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. To begin the public hearing, do we have any comments from members of the public?
We have no request to speak at this time.
Okay, then we'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have commissioners with any questions or input?
Yes.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nick Tagus on behalf of AT&T.
Great. Well, first off, I'd like to commend the city on the stealth design because I didn't even know that one that one was a tower, so it worked. The one thing that kind of stood out for me, and I'm kind of curious as to why. It said, that, if I've read that correctly, the proposed height of this tower is only about 70 feet.
That's correct.
Okay, and why only that height? Because it seems like with that height kind of limits the coverage. Is that not correct?
No, that's it's a good question. The height was determined based on the radio frequency engineers at AT&T, and when they look at how high of a tower it needs to be, they're looking at the middle of their antenna, not the top, but the middle of. So if an antenna is 8 feet tall, that center of that antenna is half of that. So in this case, AT&T's engineers saw that the greatest bang for their buck would be a 65-foot center line of where their antenna would be. And that right there was enough for them. If they requested anything higher, they wouldn't need it. And as you can see on the photo simulation there, the next box down, that's where T-Mobile's antennas, will go, assuming AT&T and T-Mobile finish their, agreement between the two companies. They have their own engineers, and they saw that as well. And that was about as much as they would need as well. So given the topography of that area, the existing heights of all the structures, that 65 feet rad center or a 70-foot tall tower is what they need to really fulfill the coverage in this area.
Okay. And is the coverage well, let me back up. So would this new tower, then would it replace or supplement the existing tower?
So it will have no material impact on Verizon Wireless since they have their own frequencies that they run on. So AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, they all have their own spectrum that they purchased from the federal government, from us. It's like your favorite radio station. You can't listen to one and then change the dial and still listen to your other station. So Verizon is going to stay in place as they are. And then AT&T and T-Mobile will now be the second and third carriers behind the building.
Okay, so that's not an AT&T tower, the one that's.
No,
currently
it's
there.
not.
Okay.
No, that rooftop material that looks like a grain silo, that's the property of Verizon Wireless. And behind those antennas is, well, in front of that material is Verizon's antennas. So if I may, I'm just going to bring this up for everyone so you can see it. The material that all carriers use to hide their antennas, it's called fiberglass reinforced plastic, or FRP. That's correct. So that's the material that is on the outside whenever you see a water tank or a grain silo. Antennas are glorified flashlights, so they beam out the signal using light. It's just light that comes out of antennas. That's how we transmit data between our antennas and our phones. We can't see through that, the human eye, but antennas, the light frequency, the band that they're in, they can see through it. So antennas can see out, we can't see in. And the reason why, over the last 20 years, engineers have chosen FRP is because it can be painted and textured to match anything you want. You want it to look like metal, you want to look like wood, any sort of texture or color, that's why they use it.
And then one last question, and I'll be completely transparent. This is purely selfish. Why was this area determined to be the area where the tower needed to be in place at this current time, and not a little bit further south?
That's a good question. So based on the data that AT&T provided us, which is where are there significant gaps in coverage and capacity, they themselves put together maps everywhere, and they have funding for different areas. And this particular project was significant because of the high traffic area of the commercial corridor, and also because one of their main competitors is also there. So it is creating parity in this area, but also because of all of the commercial retail foot traffic that's there, and now with the residential units that are there, and the amount of traffic is just dragging down the system, so they need relief in this area, and that's what this specific tower is designed to do. There might be something down the road down there. I don't know. I can't speak to that. Everything is siloed in buckets, but
Right. Well, just to put it on your radar, with all the proposed projects that are in the pipeline for the southern half of Jefferson Boulevard.
Okay.
You might want to start looking down that way to put a tower, because I know at my house in particular, if it wasn't for Wi-Fi calling, I would have no signal at all.
is it
inside my house.
mostly residential neighborhoods?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's email our planner what that general area is and send it to me. I'd be more than happy to share it with our clients. I do know that there are some very restrictive zoning ordinances about building new towers in residential areas. I'm sure you guys have had a handful that haven't been this easy. So that's one consideration. But again, I can't speak to that.
Any other comments from the commission?
How heavy is that elevated box part that's up in the air? You know what that weighs?
Hundreds of pounds, a couple thousand pounds. I don't know. That once the entitlements are approved, then it goes through all structural engineering calculations. I mean, it's a significant tower. It's made of steel. It's going to have big concrete footings in the ground. Has to go through all manner of California Building Code, structural engineering evaluations.
So it is signed off by structural engineers?
It has to be. The city won't permit any construction in your city without building permit review,
Mhm.
structural engineering. That includes foundation engineering, how much rebar, what type of concrete, they had to do soils analysis. They, dug holes, potholes in the ground to figure out what the soil type is, so then they can determine what type of footings will be required, for the foundation. It's very significant. The drawings that you see are just zoning drawings, because again, that's to demonstrate that it's consistent with the land use code. Then the final step is, well, how are you going to build it? And that's where fire building engineering takes over.
Do you know that whether or not it's been taken into consideration that the earthquake possibility of this area? I was looking online and it says there's a 77% chance of a 7.0 earthquake or higher in Northern California in the next 30 years, and that was 10 years ago, so the next 20 years, I guess. Did you know that it was approved to survive a 7.0 earthquake?
So nothing's been approved yet from building or engineering, but anything that is proposed has to meet current building code, standard codes, and that includes earthquake, resilience, also flooding. I know that there's a flood zone. So whatever this tower is designed, it's designed using all of required, current to date California building codes, and that includes anything that, resembles having to withstand, earthquakes, retrofitting. But again, that's above my pay grade. I let the engineers do that, and then AT&T's engineers do that, and I help communicate the two of them so they can
Okay, but they've
properly
done that.
review it. What's that?
They've done that.
Again, engineering hasn't happened yet until the land use approval, and, next week, then they're going to start developing, 30, 40 pages of plans that has all of the engineering.
And we're focused purely on aesthetics here for the purpose of our commission meeting this evening. We're just looking at how it looks compared to the rest of the Southport framework.
We're only looking at the
Just-
visual and not the structural.
Correct, just
That's
aesthetically.
correct, Commissioner. So this process is a discretionary process because the zoning ordinance requires a conditional use permit before it can be built.
Okay.
And that's what this process is for, to determine if the location and aesthetics are in line, in conformance with your code.
Okay.
If in fact that's the case, then AT&T moves on to phase 2, which is engineering this tower.
And Commissioner Squires, what the gentleman is referring to and how the process works is typical. You'll do, zoning level, 30% type drawings, usually typically at this stage. And then if they receive approval, then they will turn their engineers and architects and others loose and then develop a formal set of plans and submit those into our city's building department for review, which will include review by our own structural engineer. So this is not anything out of the ordinary from how other types of projects are rolled out.
Understand. Thank you.
I just have a question I think it's for city staff does staff have final approval on the mural design to ensure it's consistent with this?
Yes, that's one of the conditions of approval. Should the commission choose to approve this item tonight, the applicant would be required to provide us with a proposed design for the mural, and that would be at the discretion of the Director of Community Development to review and approve.
Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate the stealth design here, and it looks like it fits in there. I know the last time this came before the commission, we were trying to get one of those artificial trees to cover it, and then I saw those in real life, and they're terrible. So this looks good and consistent.
Yeah, we'll be submitting during the building permit phase for engineering. We'll be submitting revised photo sims most likely, and give close-ups of some of that Americana style agrarian murals. Probably have 3 different ones since there's 4 sides, but one side will be blocked. So we'll be looking at the major thoroughfare corridors And again, they'll be passed over to staff, and at that point, your staff will be, the ultimate decider if it's in line with what you guys are all contemplating tonight.
Mr. Tilley?
Yeah, I just want to say for context, what we're considering here tonight is very analogous to another project in Southport that went in several years ago now. I don't know, maybe half a mile, maybe a mile south of here. And just south of Linden, next to the Power Mart, there's a water tank there that goes up, I think, about 80 feet. I'm sure Commissioner Jackson goes by there all the time. It's, believe it or not, that's a cell tower.
Wow. We're all going to drive down Jefferson after this.
So, believe it or not, that is and has always been a cell tower since it was constructed, I don't know, 2008-ish or 10, around there. So, much like this one, the tower, the antennas are inside the tank. And even I learned something tonight about what they actually make it out of so that the radio signals can go through, but you not your eyes. So what they're doing here is very similar to that one in terms of the approach. Now, obviously, it looks different, but the MO for it, if you will, is very similar. And I, for one, think that that particular water tank turned out pretty well, especially if you may have been driven by it for years and didn't even know. I can't imagine doing any better than that. So this is a similar type application. So I hope I didn't ruin that for anybody if you go by there now. But it also has the murals on it, one facing north and one facing south. So we'll do something in a similar vein here. I think the murals really made that one, kind of put it over the top. And so if we add murals here that are similar in theme and style to what's on Nugget and this center, that, again, agrarian thing, I think that could really enhance it. But we really didn't want to dictate exactly what to do. But there's obviously a great palette out there that, somebody with much more artistic knowledge than me could draw from.
Would it be possible to add a condition that they contract with a local West Sacramento artist? Or is that outside of the scope of what we're allowed to require?
I don't know that we're in a position to mandate whom they choose to work with for something like that. I would certainly love to see that happen. I would caution against mandating it, however.
Okay.
Commissioner, to give you a little insight how this works, this material is manufactured out of state, and they're going to be given the murals, and they're going to paint them on at their factory, and they'll be shipped out.
Understood.
But everybody that's going to build this site is local to this area. All of the contractors are local to Sacramento. There's like 3 or 4 major construction companies that just work in wireless, and they're between West Sacramento and Rockland. So in terms of that, all of these towers are built using local labor.
No, that's great to hear. No, I wasn't aware that these were not painted directly, or they were painted directly at the factory. So,
Yeah.
Nope, good to know.
Yep.
I was just going to move to approve staff recommendation.
Thank you all.
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call or voice vote?
I haven't heard any significant opposition from anyone tonight, so I would think a voice vote would be sufficient.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Sure, right? I can see.
All right. So with that, we move on to the regular agenda. We have none. And that takes us to part 2. Any commissioner communications? None. All right. Then we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.